We are human, we are animals, we crave the ability to be we. I know it's called me undies. We undies might have sounded differently, right?
Is it a disco now?
Yeah, it's an after party, so it's now we go with the flash.
My goal in life is to be a laptop sticker.
Me too.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.
It's a great honor, Mr. Jaffe. It's always nice to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you. I'm honored.
Thanks for doing this, too. It's a real service to the community.
Thank you for doing this, Joseph, for doing CoronaTV in general. And it's your gift to the universe, and it's appreciated.
Very human, and I like that.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to CoronaTV. It is June 24th. It is also my half birthday because my birthday is December 24th. Yesterday, we found out that Chris Brogan was also born in 1970. So that tells you that these gray and white hairs over here are here for a reason. Turning 50 at the end of the year. I'm like stuttering about that. And I hope that I won't be cooped up at home. But who knows? Who knows? You know, it's been interesting because I've started to get more speaking requests, and looks like events are, I don't want to say they're happening again, but they might be happening again. I got one in September in Poland. I got another one in November in Belgium. I mean, apparently they're not even letting Americans into Europe. A little bit of like sticking it to the Americans, the Americans try to stick it to the EU. So I might not even be allowed to go. So maybe I'll send Rich Mulholland, my guest today, in my place, because he is about as dynamic as they come. I have to tell you, one of the things that's been so amazing about CoronaTV is that it has allowed me to just meet people that I would never have met before. And another thing that's been kind of crazy is that it's allowed me to connect back with my roots, with my South African roots. I didn't really have a strong network with my home country. All of my professional career as a consultant, as a speaker, as a thought leader has been here in the US. And this has really allowed me to connect with some of my brothers and sisters from the old country, people that are so brilliant and talented and creative. And you're going to have the opportunity to learn from another of those today. So hi, Steve Garfield. Thank you for joining. Steve continues to be my Sherpa, my muse, my whisperer in terms of helping the show be a little bit better. I'm going to try and do that today. I'm probably going to mess up because I forgot to cut and paste the link that actually says when we do the after show live on Facebook now, what's actually happening and why it's happening. But I'm sure Steve will help me out by doing a little comment there as well. In fact, that's my way of saying, Steve, please help me out. But I'll do my best. I'll do my best. All right. So, Chris Brogan warned us against people that are too overzealous in terms of saying, whoring their like, comment, share, subscribe, watch, etc. So I won't. I'll just say thank you for doing all of the above. The show continues to grow, and it's because of you, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Today is a very light day on national holidays. It is National Parchment Day. I really have nothing else to say about it except Happy Parchment Day. Whatever. If you're celebrating it, just enjoy the parchment. Birthdays. They're birthdays. Anna, how are you? Happy birthday to you on Facebook, and of course to LinkedIn. But today is not about my Facebook friends, and today is not about my LinkedIn friends either. Today is the birthday. It's not just my half birthday. It's the birthday of maybe one of the most famous people in the world. Of course, I'm not talking about Leo Messi. No, I'm not talking about him at all. I'm talking about my son, Jack Jaffe. Jack becomes a teenager today. He is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. He's 13 today. It is his bar mitzvah next week, which we're not doing in Israel and Greece. We're doing it on Zoom. And he has just, taken it on the chin, and he has, stiff upper lip, and he's just been an absolute inspiration. Jack, I love you so much. Happy birthday, my boy. I'm going to spare you the embarrassment of singing to you, but I just want you to know that you are welcome on the show anytime. I want to pop in here and chat to Rich, whatever you want. The show is as much yours as it is mine or Rich's today. Happy birthday, boy. And now we come finally, before I bring on my guest, the Seated Soliloquy. And as always, the Seated Soliloquy is based and connected to something associated with my guest. I want to start off by I was musing the other day, and I was thinking about regrets. To be honest with you, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do and saw it through without exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, but much more than this, I did it my way. Did you though? Did you truly do it your way? Did you shape your destiny, or was it molded, dictated, and directed by others? It's easier said than done. And to be completely honest, the cliche, don't live in regret, is basically bullshit that motivational speakers like myself or even my guest today espouse when on stage. But what if they weren't? You might have heard this saying before: if you worry about it in 5 years' time, then don't spend, if you won't worry about it, if you don't worry about it in 5 years' time, then don't spend more than 5 minutes. Let's start again. I'm getting so excited. If you won't worry about it in 5 years' time, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it now. That's it. We cannot change the past. We just can't. Sure, we can learn from it, but more importantly, we can just get on with it. Move forward, move ahead, deal with the hand we've been dealt, and quit destroying brain cells with what might have been, what would have been, what should have been, what could have been. Instead, we should think about what might have transpired, or if we'd made a different decision, or sweated about if Lady Luck had smiled on us versus dropping a flaming brown bag of poop on our doorsteps. No. Learning from the past is a bonus. It's a gift if we can avoid making the same mistake again in the future, but some moments or events in our lives have no lessons to be learned, no wisdom to impart, no deep meaning or enrichment to pass on. Instead, it's just about picking up the pieces and trying again, choosing a different direction, or just moving on. The chairman of the board was right. Regrets are subjective and entirely in the blue eyes of the beholder. Well, someone who I don't think has any regrets, and someone who I don't think lives in regret, and someone who I don't regret for 1 second having on my show today, is Richard Mulholland. Interestingly enough, he kicked off his career as a rock and roll roadie, operating lights for bands like Maiden and Leppard. Wow. From there, he started South Africa's largest presentation firm, Missing Link, and he co-founded 21 Tanks, South Africa's first perspective lab. In addition to being a renowned keynote speaker, he also lectures grad students. And most importantly, and I think this is the first thing I have to ask him, he has a tattoo of your mom on his left bum cheek. Should we ask him about that? Maybe we should. Hello, Richard. Hello, Rich. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. And happy birthday to Jack. That's amazing.
Jack is 13 today. And I have to start off with the first thing, which is he has a tattoo of your mom on his left bum cheek.
Yep. Well, I would love to show you. This was one of these ridiculously silly lines I wrote years ago in a bio, just because I wanted my audience to be giggling when I finally landed on stage. So it was a silly little device that worked really, really well. That when I walked onto stage, they'd already decided to laugh, and even though I didn't refer to it or I looked at it, it was just a nice, easy way. I think one of the least understood art forms is the importance of being introduced correctly, and the importance of speaker taking control of how they're introduced. And there's like cheesy ways of doing it, and there's other ways, and I like to play with that. I don't use that so much anymore, but it's still a fun one to have.
But it's so interesting because already you've imparted a lesson on us as we write our bios or refine our bios, or when people ask us how we'd like to be introduced. Because you can give the same drivel, right? You could say how many countries you've keynoted in and how you've been in the press and the Wall Street Journal and on every major news outlet. But it's almost like a magician, right? Holding a deck of cards, and the one that they want you to pick is just pushed out a little bit further in your direction. And I took the bait, and it got me excited to have you on the show. It's why I did this, right? Why my background today is a tattoo, because in fact this is my new mock-up right now. I think I want to. How do I get like you? How do I be like you?
I love that you've got lorem ipsum. That's amazing. So yeah, on the bio thing, it's quite funny. I've learned to pick and choose the one depending on the talk that I'm giving, because one of my worst things, I don't know if you ever had it as a speaker, where they just kind of say, I'm not going to read something, I'll just actually let you introduce yourself. Now, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to walk onto a stage and be like, hey, I run these companies, I've spoken this many countries, and you almost want to, and I've got this stupid, embarrassed look I do, because I stand at the side and then they read out this bio and I'm standing there like, where did they find this? Come on. I'm so embarrassed. Stop. That's not me. Like, and then you can walk onto the stage.
Stop. Go on.
It's like, you missed a word. But let me tell you why it's important. Because there's a job that has to be done. Somebody has to create an itch in the audience before you get there. And your bio can do a good job of that. Now, if you just make it crazy stuff, and occasionally, depending on the context, my one kind of one-liner sometimes is, in 2019 alone, he spoke in 26 countries on 6 continents. If I want to try and kind of push that out there and get a bit of an international market locally, so people think, wow, this guy, he's something different, then I'll throw that out. But generally, I want to try and make it that people have something they didn't expect. So toured with Iron Maiden, guest lectures at a business school. There's like, it's such a weird dichotomy that people are like, wow, this is crazy. Like now I'm at least curious to see what this guy has to say. So we've gone off track already, but there you go. So I give some thought to the intros, and I think there's something we should work on often. And you should be thinking about your audience and where you want them to be, and be unapologetic. I've had people say, I'm not going to read it, and then I just say, no, please do. I kind of need you to, because I need you're my first slide. And they're like, cool.
Okay, so there is already a key takeaway, and it's a great soundbite. You are my first slide. That's absolutely brilliant, and I'm here's what I've decided to start to do. I've taken out this pen, and I'm writing a little timestamp down, and I'm going to be very transparent about it, because there is so much great content that I have been privileged, blessed to have first. I'm a first-hand party at being able to talk to people like you, and I'm not kissing your ass. I'm being honest, and that is such a brilliant statement. And I'm saying that so many times for 2 reasons. One, if one of my interns is taking notes, now they took down that timestamp. But more importantly, I want people listening to go ahead and internalize that. And I want to point out the emphasis, because, we don't take control. What is that old saying? You don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. And that's what it is.
And it's a complete lie. I mean, it's shockingly like I spoke at TED in 2005. I was the first South African to speak on the main stage. It was a 3-minute talk, and my entire talk was first impressions lie. If people didn't give me a chance to make didn't give me a chance to make a second impression, I don't think I would ever get hired. I'm a tattooed guy all through my 20s. I was working in shorts and a t-shirt and working with corporates and banks. I actually think making a bad first impression can sometimes be helpful, because your audience kind of sees you walk in the room and they're like, shit, who's this guy? He's like a 3 out of 10. And then at the end of the meeting, you're like, okay, not too bad. You're a 7 out of 10. Then you've gone from a 3 to a 7. They're like, wow, that was a +4 meeting. But if you walk in at a 9 out of 10 and you leave like they thought you were a 10 out of 10, and you leave at a 9 out of 10, that was a -1 meeting. And I think lasting impressions are more important than first impressions. I think maybe first encounter impressions, maybe as a whole. But I mean, that's a thought I have around that as well. I think we should be thinking about, and again, even in talks, like you want to get them better at the end than they were at the beginning. So how do we take people on that journey?
No, you see, I love what you just did there, because you just did, and I've seen that with a lot of your videos, and a lot of your content. You take something and then you turn it on its head, or sometimes you're almost like it's like fishing, and you just lure us. We take the bait, and then you gut us. And I tell you what, not spin, but I didn't complete the statement, right? You don't get a second chance.
My bad.
No, I'm saying I love what you did. But it's perfect, because while you were doing that, I was able to just type it up, which is, you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. But I always follow it up with this statement: you do get a second chance to make a great second impression. And I think that is pretty consistent with what you said, which is, but you added something else, right? You added this idea that sometimes that first impression, especially if someone maybe, let's say, lazy, or people haven't really thought it through, you can surprise and delight. You can underpromise and overdeliver and make that last impression. And that's when you win, right? You win when your last and your lasting and your parting impression is exponentially better than the first.
Right. And the way to do that, I think we've got to hack people's expectation engines. I think everyone is running an expectation engine in their brain, and what they're trying to do, and they've started really trusting it. Like, I expected this, and people don't want to go against their expectations. And I remember my old business partner, he went to see the second Harry Potter film, and I'd said to him the next day, dude, I booked tickets for it. How was it? And he was like, oh, dude, it was crap. I was like, what? I said, did you read the books? He said, yes. Did you like it? He said, yes. I said, oh, so did I. He said, no, but the movie was disappointing. I was like, come on. I loved the first one. He said, so did I. I was like, I said, should I cancel? And he said, no, go see it. Let me know what you think. And I went to watch it that night. And then when I was walking out, I phoned him. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? That movie was amazing. He said, I know. I don't want to ruin it for you. And I think the idea that sometimes we get told that is going to be the best thing you've ever seen in your life. And then you watch it and you're like, nah. And so I think we've got to try to figure out, how do we hack people's expectation engines? And even in my business, it's so tricky, because often we'll do something at the beginning and then we create this expectation, and we find it very, very difficult to live up to what we created that time around. And it's just something that I'm constantly trying to focus on, is this idea of where is their expectation? How can I lower that so that I can exceed it afterwards? And usually I manage to lower people's expectation by just saying something stupid at some point. So we'll get there.
No, but I think I love that idea, hack people's expectation engines. So yesterday I played around with something, and I'm still working on it. And so I'm going to kind of pivot it a little bit and apply it to you. I'm going to put you slightly on the spot, but not really. Because for people, slightly on the spot. This is a softball. So I started with this idea of, 3 things I didn't know about you with respect to Chris, who was my guest yesterday. And then I said to him, well, why don't you tell us 3 things that we wouldn't know about you? And we didn't even get around to it, because these are the kind of ADD conversations we have on Corona TV. So what I'm going to ask you to do is give us your background and tell us about you. And tell us maybe 3 things that clearly we might not know about you, including but not limited to what you do for a living, and how you come to be here. So 3 things. So it's basically introduce yourself in using an awkward owl staring at you analogy.
Okay, right. Okay, so the first thing is I was born in Glasgow, Scotland. I moved to South Africa when I was 9 years old. My dad's mum was on holiday in South Africa and she died here. My dad came over for the funeral. I had seen his sisters here, applied for a job just on a whim. Him and my mum needed a fresh start. It was an amazing story. They always said to us that it was kind of a decision. Do we get divorced or do we just like chuck it all in and just roll the dice again and try again in a new country? And they were like, no, okay, let's give it a bash. And they just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. So clearly it worked. So born in South Africa. I've not drunk alcohol, or I don't take alcohol, drugs. I eat a plant-based diet. I'm essentially what you'd call in the punk rock community straight edge, which is it was a kind of a movement. I was very involved in the punk rock movement in South Africa when I was younger. I co-owned Croakroom Records, which was South Africa's premier punk rock records label, and I'm still quite involved, and punk is a big part of my life. So that's fact number 2. And then fact number 3, and I guess people that know me know this, but I am an absolute obsessive board game player. So behind me there is about 1,000 board games. And so any chance I have, if I rope anybody into something, I'll try and find some kind of game that I'll be playing with them. They're all over the place. And I'm always trying to get people to play a game with me. And I've realized something during this Corona period about why it is, because my business has been in cruising altitude. So I guess the 4th bonus one is that I started a presentation company when I was 22. And it's kind of been in cruising altitude. Everything's just been okay. And I don't need more stuff. Like, we have a great life. So I've not had to try too hard. And I didn't realize how bored I was. And this hobby really took off because I loved the problem-solving space it took my brain into. And then during this, when my business was attacked, all of our client conferences were canceled and all my speaking work as a kind of sideline was canceled. And all of a sudden I had very meaningful problems to solve. And at the end of the day, I didn't feel like playing a game. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I play games. Anytime that I'm finding myself wanting to reach for a game, it means I didn't challenge it. I didn't solve a meaningful enough problem during the day. So that was like one of my mid-COVID lessons. So there's 3.5. Thanks.
I'm going to play a quick game with you now with Don't Think. Just point to your board games.
Yeah.
we were trying to do that with the, like, if I want to point to the M of mom, I would go, whoop, like there. It's always closer than you think.
Shit.
Yeah. So StreamYard muckety mucks out there, figure out a way to, what do you call it? Zoom mirroring or mirroring. So if I want to go left, I go left. And if I want to go right, I go right. You know what I mean? I will give you your extra bonus factoid about you. I'm going to refer to you as the South African Gary V. By virtue of nothing more than the fact that you're both folding your arms. And I think, although he looks very clean cut and very wholesome, and you look, mad, bad, and dangerous to know. So I don't know.
I'm a vegan, introverted board game player. Not the scariest category of human beings. All the tattoos are an act.
So let's talk about that for a second. You talk about it because is that for real? No bullshit. You're saying you're an introvert, and because I would never have thought that.
Well, in fact, so one of the biggest lessons for me now is that over this period of time so I've always known I'm a very big introvert. It's been a real thing for me. Like I love being on a stage, and I can be on a stage. There's thousands of people, and it's amazing. After the stage, when everybody wants to come up and chat to you, I get anxiety. Years ago, my business partner actually ran like blocker for me. I was getting like a panic attack, and it was just from all the people. And I've even after they've opened it all up, that where we could go out again, I just wanted to stay here. I don't want to meet people. This has been the best thing that has ever happened to me. I get up in the morning, I see my wife and my kids, I do some exercise over there, I get ready, I sit down and I speak to people. And when I'm done with my day, I pick up a novel, I have a best time, and I've basically not seen anybody. I'll maybe go for a skate by myself. I've got a one wheel that I really love, go for a ride occasionally. But this has been the first time. I never realized how much of an extrovert's world we live in. We live in two people's worlds, extroverts and early birds. And I am neither. I am a night owl introvert. And it's been this realization like, my time has come. This is my time. This is amazing. I can work through the night. I have the calls I'm making are with people overseas. So I have calls late into the night. I don't get up early at all, and I meet people when I want to meet them. Meetings are half the length, literally. Instead of having hour-long meetings, they're 30-minute meetings. And the only downside of the whole thing is I've been riding my motorcycles less. That's it. And not hugging my parents.
So wait a second. Extroverts and early birds. Like, is there a Venn diagram? Like, how does that is it mutually exclusive? How does that work? Because you are neither. So what percentage? You're saying 50%. How does that work? I'm fascinated.
Well, what I'm saying is that the world, I've never realized before that the world is catered for you getting up and being at work by 8 o'clock. And if you listen to every guru, it's like get up early at 5 o'clock and meditate and, have an ice shower and then, I don't know, like masturbate backwards. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, we're all supposed to have these rituals. And like, dude, did you even meditate, bro? If you don't meditate, you've got to start feeling like you're not one of the cool kids. I was like, I am crap at meditating. I try it all the time just because I don't want to be that guy who says, no, do you meditate? No. I mean, I say yes to that answer, but what I mean is I have meditated, but I'm not very good at it. I taught Tai Chi for years, and just like our Bagua, I don't know actually. I don't know. There was one of those words that as it came out, I was like, oh, just trying to call it back in. But yeah, I think so. Whereas for me, like I really enjoy getting my thoughts down later. I work better later, and the world isn't really designed around that. You're supposed to finish and then go home and do your thing and go to bed early so you can wake up well and early and do it all over again. So that's one thing. And working from home has changed all of that. So it kind of gave me permission to start later and work later. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Why can't I just do this? And then the second thing was that I'm supposed to go out there and shake hands at big networking events and be up there and be out there and socialize with people. Like, my family let me off the hook for years because they know that I arrive at an event, at a family event or a braai or whatever, and I take a novel and I say hi to everybody, and then I grab my Kindle and I go sit in the corner. And people that know me just kind of have stopped giving me shit about it years ago. It took everybody, I think they all thought I was weird, but that's just like it's my thing. And now it's been my time. I don't have to apologize for anyone for staying home and not leaving.
I have to tell you, I saw an article maybe a few years ago. I don't know if you came across it, but it coined the term extroverted introvert. And I've never heard it before. And it said, here are the signs to determine if you are an extroverted introvert. And I went through it and I was actually blown away because almost across the board, I was check, 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 check. One of them that I remembered from this checklist was this idea that you go to a party and you're kind of the life of the party, or you're loud, you're active, you're talking a lot, and then something happens like this, and you can't stand the sight of anyone, and you just want to get the hell out of there and run as fast as you can. I was like, that's me.
Yeah, so my tank, same as a speaker, I can get onto stage and hopefully be quite explosive and do these things. So I've got a pretty good tank, but I find that extrovert tanks, they empty slowly, constantly over the whole day. Whereas my tank comes up there and just goes, wah! And so I can be out there and deliver and go hard and really try and be crazy and life's all the party. Everybody always thinks I'm drunk, but I don't drink. But then once I tap out, I can't go back. So like it's, I don't know if you've ever, when I was a kid, I noticed it. We'd go to this nightclub called the White Horse Inn. And there was a point in the night where we'd all go get a big German bratwurst sausage. And at that point, everyone would be drunk and dancing. We'd all be having the best time. We'd go down and get the sausage. And all the drunk guys, we'd all be eating. And then everyone would be like, yeah, let's go dance again. And I could never, I was never like had post-sausage dance. Because at that point, I'd already started the downturn. I was like, meh, I'm done. I'll see you guys in a second. Then I'd walk home. So yeah, I think if that's the term, I would say that I'm a an extroverted introvert, or I'm an introvert with extroverted abilities.
So I'm trying to think of the acronym, but it would be PTSD, which would be post-traumatic sausage dance, right?
Yes.
Did I get that right? Yeah, that's a different kind of. So you suffered from PTSD.
Yes, it's all to do with sausage dancing, which goes back to reverse masturbation.
Exactly. These are absolutely things that you plan to cover.
Time code, interns, time code.
Yeah. No, interns ignore. In fact, there might be. Wait, hold on. They just quit, all of them.
Yeah.
En masse.
I apologize for damaging your subscriber count.
Or I'm, it might boost it. We never know. I thought I would actually, I don't know if you've been watching the show, I always find a quote that is connected to my guest, and then I play a little game with them where they have to try and guess who said the quote. And so this is today's quote, which I think comes very nicely into what we were just discussing. According to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. That means to the average person, if you go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy.
Robin Williams? I don't
know.
So,
right category, it's a comedian.
Comedian, yeah, it felt like that. Country, nation?
United
US.
States.
An era, current?
Current, absolutely.
Dave Chappelle?
I'm going to say no.
Shorter.
But I love the thinking. It was Jerry Seinfeld. I think you would have got it in 20 questions. In 20 questions, you would have got it probably after about 6.
It felt like a comedian more than a speaker. But yes, I could see. So do you know I've never seen an episode of Seinfeld in my life, which is just one of those arbitrary things that now that I've collected it on principle, I'm just not going to. But I've also not watched that. What's the mob show? Sopranos. But I have been told recently that I should really fix that and I should just dive in.
I have my equivalent, by the way, which is The Office. I've never watched an episode of The Office. And my
country.
No, the US. And it took off. And it was funny. You talking about first impressions. I remember starting to watch the first one. I started to watch it, and I said, "This is just a direct ripoff of the UK one with Ricky Gervais." And I got so pissed off about it that there was no originality or creativity, that they were just ripping it off. I mean, they were almost like verbatim. I felt like they were reading the same script. And I said, you know what, I am just not going to be bothered with this. And of course, they changed direction a hard left very quickly, and it became a bit of a cult series here. I think that feeds into what you were discussing, what you were saying perfectly.
I actually prefer the US one. I like what they did. I thought the character development, the British one is more uncomfortable to watch, and it's a different kind of comedy, and you feel like, oh, I can't believe they did that. The US one, I thought it did more with it. It did what it needed to do, and I'm a big fan. It's worth reinvesting. It's worth reinvesting time. I think it's still good. Did you see what those guys did with Slack? The Slack, the Office, I think it's the Office Slack.com or slacktheoffice.com. Somebody has created every single episode as a running Slack channel. So you can see them all. They've done a Slack channel. You can see all the chats and them sending each other messages and all the dialogue, and every episode of The Office has been recreated in Slack chats. It's amazing. Wow.
Now that is one worthy thing to do in quarantine.
Yeah. Somebody has time.
And Haiti just said, she was, did you know this when you chose the owl pick? I'm assuming that she's referring to you being a night owl as opposed to an early bird. So yes, everything was planned and prepped. And it's funny because, if I go a little bit backwards, Steve actually asked if you had told me how you wanted to be introduced. And the answer is no. But I went and did my research and moved around a little bit and planned a few things. And that's interesting, right? Because you do that obviously when you're giving a presentation. You don't do that now in this type of interview. But I think you said to me when we're discussing, backstage, that you really appreciated some of the research and some of the background. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about why, for example, wouldn't you say, like in a show like this is how I think I think I know what you might say, but why wouldn't you have done that in this particular case?
Well, the burden of preparation in an interview always falls on the interviewer. The burden of preparation on a talk falls on me. Thank you very much, Bob. The burden of preparation on a talk falls on me. So I want to prepare every part of my narrative structure when I'm on stage. I wasn't sure where you were going to take this. So I was quite happy to have my open-ended generic from a site that kind of covers a little bit of everything. And then, we can draw on any one of those pieces. But we did, as I said, discuss it a little bit. And also what I'd say to you is how much I appreciate it. I get asked to do quite a few interviews and things. And it's amazing how often I can see that this person, like somebody said, hey, chat to this guy, and they know nothing about anything. And the fact that you had done some research and it just was just something that will really impact, I imagine, the quality of your show, and your viewers will see that you've taken the time. In talks, it's one of Missing Link's 9 things, but we talk about having a gas tank, give a shit tank. And I always say to people, like, the first thing you have to do when you get on stage is you got to fill your audience's gas tank, and then you got to get off stage before that gas tank runs out. And the fact that you did that preparation meant that you had a relatively full give a shit tank, and I thought that was worthwhile. And I really appreciated it.
And you're very welcome. And funnily enough, as I've said to and I try to be about as transparent or naked as I can be. I'm not going to show you the tattoo on my butt cheek either. But I was on the other side. I'm often on the other side being interviewed. And when I reversed the roles for the first time, there was a tendency to almost alpha male my way and try and out talk my guest, or without trying to. And every single episode I try and listen more and let go and allow my guests to be the hero, because that's why I wanted them on the show. And it's just been, I tell you, Rich, it's been unbelievable. It's been like a life-changing moment for me to attempt to just try and shut the hell up once in a while.
I saw 2 interviews. It's funny that you mentioned Gary Vaynerchuk. I respect him immensely. I'm not the biggest fan personally. That's not to say that I'm sure he's a lovely person and I would love to have a chat with him. I'm sure he's great, but just the style. And I remember watching an interview. It just so happened Seth Godin, who I've flown to see in the US a couple of times, and we actually shared a stage before. Seth Godin was getting interviewed by Tim Ferriss one week and Gary Vee the next week. And on Tim Ferriss's show, Tim Ferriss, you could hear how ruthlessly curious he was about learning about Seth Godin. And actually, there was times when Tim wasn't. There was times when he wanted to be the smart guy. And then the next week, Gary Vaynerchuk interviewed Seth Godin. And every time Seth Godin started answering a question, Gary tried to be like, right. So like, in fact, I've got this story. And then, and he made it and went off on this thing. And eventually Seth Godin said in the interview, and it was still in there, it was like, Gary, do you actually want me here? Because I'm about to leave if you keep interrupting me and answering my questions. And I think this idea of, it's a real tricky thing, because you're clearly a smart person and you have opinions on so much. And just the idea, what some people don't realize, is creating a show like this is actually giving yourself the gift of not speaking, which I think is incredible.
One of the things that's also been hard is to, and I'm sure you would subscribe to this as well, especially in the Q&A, right, of a speech. And I want to make sure we get to that, because it's fascinating to me, is that when you're thinking of the next question you want to ask, you're not listening. You're not actually hearing what people have to say. And for me, part of the skill has been looking at the comments that come in. For example, Robert will actually talk about the fact that the extroverted introvert, I guess, is real. Or he followed up and he said the host should be the host, use their forum platform for the guest voice. And that's also been hard to multitask, right? To figure out when should a comment be inserted and when do you just kind of respect the one-on-one. But as I said, I'm trying to get a little bit better, and it's a nice journey, and it's been refreshing as well. So I appreciate your insight too. Rich, I said I was going to get into what you do for a living. And I'll tell you just a very brief anecdote, which is when I worked at Nando's in South Africa, I forget the company they used, but it was a presentation company, a company that pretty much, I'll try and find out who they were one day and share it with you. You probably know who they are. But they used, I suppose, Flash, or they used some kind of animation. And so, for example, when I was showing sales going up in the Nando's stores, the little Barcelos cockerel, ironically, I wasn't meant to have it, but I just bought some more peri-peri from Nando's USA. This episode brought to you by Nando's USA. So the little Barcelos cockerel would, would jump up the bars. And I'd never seen it done before. And I was young, I was 22, 23 years old. I've still never seen it done. I've still never seen Americans use real animation to bring their slides to life. So I'm fascinated by the fact that you're in this business of public speaking. And what I realize is how it is a work in progress. So talk a little bit about, I know you said you started the company, but talk about this art of public speaking and why, as you said, now is the best time to be doing it.
Yeah, so I guess I would say that we're not in the business of public speaking. I'm in the business of presentation, of which public speaking is an aspect of it. On the animation thing, I think it's a Goldilocks. There's a Goldilocks. There's too much animation just because we can animation, and then there's not enough animation, in which some case of movement would be very, very helpful. Just, I guess, two things on that in the world we live in right now. In the world we live in right now, all animation will be seen when you deliver a slide at a different pace by your audience than you intended. So we've been recommending people to strip it out. And the second thing, just relative to the point you made about engaging with your audience and Robert's question and things like this, was that the best thing about presenting online is your audience is no longer a passive participant. They've actually been unleashed from their prison, and they're now active participants in your show. And I think and I found that when I'm presenting online, these online events and webinars and things, is that I engage with the people in the chat at the side, and it's just super satisfying to be able to do that. I actually feel less alone on stage now, and I tend to be trying to engage with people in real time than I was in in-person events. So that's really cool. So
what did you mean when you said people see animations at different times or at different speeds or paces?
If I'm right, well, so when I arrive at a normal show, there's only one tech crew, and they control everything. If I do a show now with 1,000 people, there are 1,000 tech crews, and every technical crew, every audience member is their own technical crew, and every speaker is their own technical crew. And my could hit, and there's a latency between me wanting my animation to happen and you actually seeing it. And because I believe one of the most important tools of a speaker is if you're using slides, is your ability to nail your segues, to transition from slide to slide, to make it feel like it's just running beautifully, to preempt where you're going just before you get there. I don't want my timings to be killed off by a bad latency on the system. So I strip out everything that doesn't need to be there, and then I can still have my timings and still work through things, and my audience has got a chance of getting the experience I want them to have.
We could have probably spent this entire time talking about tips and the power of segues and all of these best practices, but we could have also spent this entire time just talking about content strategy, because you are a master at content strategy. You are a master. Your YouTube channel is just filled with unbelievable content, and I'm definitely going to direct people to find out more on how they can and see some of these videos. One of them that you actually posted was 5 tips for better Zoom presentations, and I won't ask you to go into those 5 tips, but I will ask you to share that incredible hack regarding segues and how you can use and how you can actually master them when delivering a Zoom presentation. You can say no if you want.
No, with pleasure. So one of the biggest challenges that you have in Zoom presentations often is, okay, there's a few little things, and let's just talk about two things that I think that we should change here. The first thing is not being ready for this. The idea that somebody will stand there and say, hi, everyone, thanks so much. Okay, let me just share my screen. Everyone has seen the hunched shoulder screen share pose. It's this. Let me just go and share my screen. Hold on a second, click, click, and then, yeah, thanks, yeah, there we go, there it is. And then what they do, and you see their eye moving around trying to find things, then your PowerPoint comes on screen. And I'm like, I don't want to see your PowerPoint. I want to see your like backstage. That's like, I don't close the kimono. I don't want to see that. And then they get to the slide they want, or my worst is they actually present from PowerPoint's stage view. So you can see the notes thing and they just show you that little thing. Come on, make an effort. Like show your audience you respect them. So I've got a problem is I want to see my slide. The other thing is they could be ready, so they could have got into show mode beforehand, but then they start off, and then when they start presenting, they can see their full screen slide and they've gone into that, but they can't see their next slide. And that's a problem for me, and it makes it slightly difficult. Now, there's a couple of ways to work around this, because what I want to do is I always want to know what my next slide is so that I can glance at it and then know, okay, I'm going to this, and then carry on chatting to my audience a little bit and know that when I hit that clicker, that the next slide is definitely going to be this. It's going to be X. So I start building into it, and then I click without looking. I don't look back. I don't look at anything. I give it a second, then I'll refer it and move on. Now, that's trickier to do in Zoom. Sorry, carry on.
No, I was saying, please continue, because we just had a slight lag there, but the key is in Zoom. How do you do that in Zoom?
So in Zoom, you've got two methods. The first is to upload your slides to Google Slides. But the nice thing about that is that Google Slides creates a separate browser window for your presenter view. So you can share, you can go full screen in Google Slides and then create a presenter view from that and share those separately. But actually, the easier way to do it, it takes a little bit of preparation just before you start, is what you do is you open up your PowerPoint in the normal window, you go to your first slide, you open your own private Zoom room, and before you're going live into whichever event you're going to, you go to share screen, and instead of going basic, there's actually a second little tab that a lot of people just never noticed, and it says advanced. If you go into advanced, there's an area that says portion of screen. So you select that, and then this green square will appear, and you drag that over to the part of your slide that kind of looks like this. So then you got the slide sorter down the side. You get that already, you make sure it's lined up nicely, you click through your slides, you'll see that they'll go, you get back up there. And then what happens is when you're ready to start the show, and this is also where I want you to try this one little thing, just a little bit to make it a little awkward for a second, but just before you're about to go live, when they're introducing you, you hit share screen, you hit advanced, and you have your mouse hovering over a portion of screen. Now, what this means is between you and your audience, there's going to be a big block. They're not going to see it, but you're going to see it if you're looking at your screen, because it's got that big block there. But just ignore it and carry on chatting and say like, hey, everyone, thanks so much for having me. It's really, really exciting, blah, blah, blah. Do a bit of an intro and say, I think the best way to describe this would be with a visual. So I'm actually just going to turn on a visual for you quickly. And then you just hit one little button, click. And the second you hit that little button, it just goes boom. And then your slide is perfectly lined up on screen. And everyone's like, you can see people's reactions. They're like, wow. I don't understand how you can share screen that quickly. And it's just because you're prepared. I think when it comes to, I always say in online events, is that your audience wants an ROA, a return on attention. And in return, you want an ROE, a return on effort. And your return on effort plus their return on attention is everybody's return on investment. So the more effort you put in, the better chance you have of giving them, saying thank you for their attention. And we should, because our audiences are larger now. I did an event the other day with 7,000 people with 2 weeks preparation. That doesn't happen in an in-person world that often.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in some respects, events have dropped off, but that's probably because the organizers haven't figured out how to expand their views, right? I mean, the one thing that is coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic is the fact that physical events will no longer be restricted to the people that are physically in the room at that time. And that changes everything. That is the most liberating thing in the world for all parties concerned. You want to come to the event, you want to be there in person, great. You will have the opportunity to have a beer with the presenter, unless it's, you know, Rich or myself, and we've run back to our room at 10 p.m. because we don't want to see anyone. But for, you know, for the others, there'll be other things to look forward to.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Okay.
And in fact, it might be real-time engagement. They can ask you questions in the middle of the talk. So yeah.
So Rich, I want to touch on two more things before we head over to the Zoom room. And there's a real incentive for people to come to the Zoom room because there's so much more to share and so much to discuss. There was something else that caught my eye, and rather than watch the video, because I'm almost certain that I might be guilty of it. I don't even know what it is, but you created a video that said the worst way to end your presentational event. What is it? And I hope to God that I am not guilty.
I'm willing to bet that you're not guilty of it, but I'm willing to bet double that you have been a victim of it. So you get booked for an event. Some speakers can do it, but you've been booked for an event, or in fact, more presenters would do it. But they told you they want you to be the last speaker, and you finish, and you're working towards your peroration. Now, your peroration is that there's a bit. So as I'm getting ready to build, I might be, you know, finishing off my talk and say, ladies and gentlemen, and if you get these three things together, and we can work and come together to try and make this happen, only then can we unleash the power that I've spoken about in this talk. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And you've built it up there in the last 5 minutes, and you buy your applause in those last few seconds, that peroration. You've got to tell your audience, they must feel like this is building up inside them. And then they go like this. And then everyone's like, yes, thank you. And they're cheering. And then, you know, the MC walks up, like, thank you so much. Okay. I just want to do some housekeeping quickly. If you've not had your parking ticket validated, if you can go to Mike at the back of the room, and it's like every single second, it's like, imagine you just run a sprint and you want your audience to leave with their heart pounding. But instead, somebody comes on stage and it just drops it down and down and down and down and down. And you get your audience away from that place you built them up to, and everyone just kind of walks out the door arbitrary again. Whereas if your speaker or somebody had got them up to that level, then when they leave, they can leave feeling like, yeah, that was amazing. That was crazy. That was rad. And I think that we make that mistake. Now, I get that sometimes the challenge is afterwards you want to go to Q&A, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem, because you can finish your talk and then still build it up there. Then the audience can do it, and you can get to the last question. And for me, the simple device in the last question, and I always work with the MC beforehand, so we know we're going to do this. As we pick a question, it'll be right. And I think we can all agree that is an amazing point to finish off on. Sue, thanks so much for that question. It really just drives home that final message, which, as you remember from my talk, was only if we can do these kind of things, we can make it happen. I really look forward to sharing stage with you guys again. Thank you so much for your attention. And I'm going to hand back to Joseph to take it home. Thanks, everybody. Kill Mike. You know, so you can get back from a Q&A. I hate the idea that we give our audience a down before they walk out the door. You must. So, by the way, I get housekeeping has to be done. Do it before the final speaker. Guys, just before I get into the final speaker, I just want to remind you, if you do have a park ticket, there will be somebody waiting there, things like this. On that note, head back. Here's our speaker, you know, Joseph Jaffe, and up you get. So that was quite a long thing, but
no. I first of all, I was smiling because I know exactly what you were thinking, and my only comeback for that is, ladies and gentlemen, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. This is your moment of truth. This is when you decide. This is when you take control of your life. There are boxed lunches at the end, at the back of the room. You choose if you want to go to vegetarian or plant-based. You choose if you want to have meat. You choose. You get a box.
Kick the. There's your parking ticket. There's your parking ticket. Yeah, you can have the best.
You get a validation.
My old business partner, I think he's the best working MC in South Africa, and I know that if I finish off, he'll take whatever I've given him and build it up there, and he'll kind of get it to the end. But a lot of times it just doesn't happen. And I'm finding it more and more and more in online events. And the only reason why it's so absolutely critical that you don't do an online event is the second the audience is like, oh, this guy, and not that person specifically, but that function guy, they leave. And you just lose their attention. So you rather want to try and just hold on to them and just keep them in the beautiful place you've got them to. And that's not to say, by the way, that I'm always going to get audience to a beautiful place, but speakers do. Presenters can.
We are in a beautiful place right now, and all that really remains is to set up the next step, which is the Zoom room. I think Seth might have set it up really nicely, which is, can we get Rich to do a tour of his shelves in the Zoom room? We might be able to. We'll see what he says. You know, there's one other little incentive, which is, and this is so funny. First of all, in my gut, I just knew that this was this conversation was exactly what I wanted it to be, what I hoped it would be. It's been such fun. You know, the only thing that might have been more fun is if it was in person, but maybe it's proof that you don't always need to be in person. You've created these videos. When I was first told about you, you know, this was one of the proof points. And you know, my brother actually recommended you, and he said, you know, he's had a video that's had over 21 million views, which is this video. And you know what he didn't realize is that at the end of the day, when someone makes a recommendation, I do this with my guests sometimes. I say, hey, Rich, anyone you think would be good on the show that you'd recommend? I trust you implicitly. I don't have to vet them. I don't have to study them. I don't have to research them. You say someone should be on the show, they're on the show. And the fact is, we didn't even get to discuss, you know, this video, how not to live in regret, and why this had 21 million views. And then when you followed it up with the second one, it didn't do as well. And I think you've been quite honest about like understanding why it didn't do that well. I also found this one, which I loved, which is this too shall pass. And you've kind of scribbled over it and said bullshit. And I wanted to ask you about that. And then I love this one too, right? Which is, with all these life lessons, you then come back with a video that says how not everything has to be a fucking life lesson. This is the magic of Rich Mulholland, and maybe if we're lucky, he'll share some of these additional thoughts and insights in the Zoom room with us. Rich, thank you so much for coming in. And before you go, I love this too. I mean, and again, it shows your creativity, which is you can connect with Rich, and at the same time, you can getrich.af. What does that stand for? That sounds like something. I'm not really sure what that means. What is that? Is that a website? Is that a? But that's his website. But tell people where, you know, what will wait for them. What's awaiting for them at GetRichAF?
Well, it was simply, I wanted a URL. It's one of these short link farm websites, and I just wanted a way that if you wanted to connect on, funny enough, probably LinkedIn is my favorite. So I know that's very unpopular, but it's probably my favorite place to engage with people. I enjoy the type of conversation, but it's got my Twitter, my LinkedIn, links to my company, links to my YouTube channel. If you do want to see some stuff there, links to my books that I've written, you can check those out and just generally get in touch. Like I'd like to think I'm a pretty friendly and approachable guy. So I just wanted one place where people could go to find links to all the different websites. So please come say hi.
He is not South Africa's Gary Vee. Gary Vee is America's Rich Mulholland. He's the anti-Gary Vee. He is an original, and you know, I called you the Peacock. I was trying to think of the speaker's speaker, the presenter's presenter, but I called you the Peacock in a sense because, and maybe what I didn't realize at the time is I was referring to your shelves, all those beautiful colors or the colors on your tattoos. But you know, thank you so much for coming in. It was truly an absolute pleasure and privilege to chat with you today.
It was amazing. Thanks so much for having me. See you everybody later.
All right, and Rich will be heading over to the Zoom room for you, bit.ly/CoronaTV after show. It will be live on Facebook as well, but if you want to interact a little bit with Rich, remember, extroverted introverts are welcome. You can ask a question and then, you know, leave. So we'll see you there in a few minutes. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.